I need to tell you this while I still remember my own name, while I can still distinguish between what happened and what I've become. They're going to find this recording eventually, tucked away in the maintenance logs of Station 47, buried beneath terabytes of atmospheric data that no one will ever analyze. By then, I'll either be dead, or I'll be something that used to be called Marcus Webb. Either way, the man speaking these words right now won't exist anymore. That version of me dies the moment I finish this account. So listen carefully, because if you're hearing this, you need to understand what we found out here. What's been waiting in the silence between stars. What's been calling to us through the static, patient and hungry, and so much older than we ever imagined. My name was Dr. Marcus Webb, astrophysicist, radio astronomer. 42 years old, divorced, no kids, no pets, no one waiting for me back on Earth except a brother I haven't spoken to in 3 years, and a one-bedroom apartment in Seattle that I paid 6 months advance rent on before I left. I was the perfect candidate for this mission. Brilliant, isolated, and completely expendable. Station 47 was a deep space monitoring facility positioned at Lagrange point L5, suspended in gravitational equilibrium between the Earth and the Moon. From here, we could observe the cosmos without the interference of planetary atmospheres, tracking radio signals from distant galaxies, searching for patterns in the cosmic microwave background, and yes, participating in humanity's ongoing effort to find intelligent life beyond our world. We were SETI's most remote outpost, 4 researchers living in a tin can in the void, recording signals that traveled across impossible distances to reach us. Signals that were usually just the death screams of dying stars, the electromagnetic exhaust of black holes, the random noise of a violent universe screaming into the dark. Usually. I arrived at Station 47 on September 12, 2024. The crew rotation brought me in to replace Dr. Sarah Chen, who completed her 6-month tour and returned to Earth with what Mission Control described as acute psychological strain. I learned later, much later, after everything had already begun, that Sarah had requested an early extraction, that she'd spent her last 2 weeks on the station refusing to enter the observation deck, that she'd scratched the words "Don't listen" into the bathroom mirror with her fingernails before they'd pulled her off. They didn't tell me that during the briefing, of course. The remaining crew seemed normal enough. Commander James Ridley, 56, career military, with a PhD in aerospace engineering. Calm, professional. The kind of man who inspired confidence, even when he was explaining the 17 different ways the station's life support could fail. Dr. Nina Petrov, 34, quantum physicist and systems analyst, originally from Moscow, with a sharp sense of humor and sharper intellect. And Dr. David Park, 28, the youngest of us, a prodigy in radio astronomy, who'd published his first paper at 19. We were alone together, suspended in the dark. The nearest humans were 376,000 kilometers away. The first 3 weeks were routine, glorious even. I'd spent my entire career dreaming of this kind of isolation, this perfect silence where I could focus entirely on the work. We monitored the assigned frequencies, logged our observations, ran maintenance checks, exercised in the cramped gym module, and ate rehydrated meals while watching Earth turn slowly beneath us. At night, though night was a meaningless concept out there, I'd float in my sleep pod and stare at the porthole, watching stars that didn't twinkle, that didn't waver, that burned with a steady light that felt ancient and cold and utterly indifferent. I loved it. The signal started on October 4th. I was alone in the observation deck, running a routine scan of the Bode's Void, that massive expanse of space containing almost no galaxies, a cosmic desert 330 million light-years across. It was 02 o'clock station time. Nina and David were asleep. Ridley was in the command module, monitoring station systems. The signal appeared on my screen at 1420 megahertz, the hydrogen line, the frequency most likely to carry intentional messages, because any sufficiently advanced civilization would know to look there. But this wasn't the clean pattern signal we'd been trained to identify. This was something else. At first, I thought it was interference, a glitch in the equipment. The waveform was irregular, almost organic, pulsing like a heartbeat. But as I isolated and filtered it, I realized there was a pattern. Not mathematical like we'd expected, not binary or sequential. It was rhythmic, almost musical. I recorded a 30-second sample and ran it through our analysis software. The AI flagged it immediately: non-random origin, complexity indicating artificial source, directional bearing pointing toward the boat's void. My hands were shaking when I called Ridley. "You're sure?" he asked, floating into the observation deck 15 minutes later, his silver hair drifting around his weathered face. "As sure as I can be. It's not natural. It's too structured, too consistent, but it's not like any signal pattern in our database." "Where's it coming from?" I pulled up the directional analysis. "That's the problem. The bearing points to the void, but there's nothing out there. No galaxies, no stars, nothing that could generate a signal like this." Ridley stared at the screen for a long moment. His expression was unreadable, but I saw his jaw tighten. "We follow protocol, record everything, run a full verification. Wake Nina and David in 4 hours and brief them. No external communications until we've confirmed this independently." "You don't seem excited," I said. He looked at me then, and I saw something in his eyes I didn't understand. "Not yet. I've been doing this for 20 years, Marcus. I learned a long time ago not to get excited about things I don't understand." We spent the next week studying the signal. Nina confirmed my findings. It was artificial, no question. David isolated the source bearing with increasing precision, though the origin point remained impossibly distant, somewhere in that vast emptiness where nothing should exist. The signal was constant, never varying in intensity, never stopping, and it was getting clearer. That's what disturbed me most. Every day, the signal's resolution improved, as if it were somehow getting closer, even though our measurements showed the source was stationary. The rhythmic pulse became more defined, and underneath it, we started detecting something else: harmonics, overtones, layers of sound woven together in ways our software couldn't fully parse. "It's beautiful," David said on the 7th day, his eyes locked on the waveform display. He'd been spending 12-hour shifts in the observation deck, barely sleeping, barely eating. "It's like music, but not music. Like language, but not language. It's something in between." "It's just electromagnetic radiation," Nina said, though her voice was uncertain. "We're anthropomorphizing, seeing patterns because we want them to be there. But we all heard it. When we converted the signal to audio frequencies, when we played it through the speakers in the observation deck, it filled the station with sound that shouldn't have been beautiful, but was haunting, hypnotic, like a choir singing in a cathedral built from the void itself. We listened to it for hours. That was our first mistake. On the 15th day, I woke up at 3 o'clock station time and couldn't remember going to sleep. I was floating in the observation deck, naked, headphones pressed against my ears, the signal playing at maximum volume. The waveform display cast blue light across my skin. I had no memory of leaving my sleep pod, no memory of coming here. No memory of anything after dinner. I was crying. Tears drifted around my face in zero gravity. Perfect spheres that caught the light like tiny planets. I didn't know why I was crying. I felt hollow, emptied out, like something had reached inside me and scooped out everything that made me Marcus Webb and left just the shell behind. I pulled off the headphones and the world rushed back. The hum of life support, the creak of the station's structure, the sound of my own breathing. My hands were numb. I'd been floating here so long the cold had seeped into my bones. I never told the others. I should have. That was my second mistake. Instead, I threw myself into the work. We were making progress. David had identified distinct patterns within the signal, repeating sequences that occurred at precise intervals.
Nina had discovered that the signal's frequency was slowly shifting, dropping by fractions of a hertz every day, sliding down the electromagnetic spectrum like a key change in a song. "If it keeps dropping at this rate," she said during our morning briefing on day 18, "it'll move out of our receiver range in about 6 weeks. Unless we adjust our equipment to follow it," David said quickly. Too quickly. He'd been sleeping less than any of us. His eyes ringed with dark circles, his movements jittery and precise. "We can't lose it. Not now. We're so close to understanding." "Close to understanding what?" Ridley asked. David opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I don't know, but it's important. It's the most important thing that's ever happened." Ridley looked at each of us in turn. I saw him really seeing us for the first time in weeks. David's manic energy, Nina's obsessive note-taking, my own hollow-eyed exhaustion. "We're taking a break," he announced. 24 hours. No one enters the observation deck. We eat, we sleep, we remember we're human beings and not just signal processors. "No," David said. The word came out flat and hard. "We can't stop now." "That's an order, Doctor." David's hands clenched into fists. For a moment I thought he might actually attack Ridley. Then something in his face crumpled, and he turned away, floating toward his pod without another word. That night, our arbitrary cycle of darkness, I floated in my sleep pod and tried to remember what my ex-wife's face looked like. I couldn't. I could remember facts about her. Jennifer, married for 6 years, divorced for 2, worked as a pediatric surgeon in Boston, left me because I cared more about distant stars than about the life we were building together. But her face? Gone. When I tried to picture her, all I could see was the waveform of the signal, pulsing blue against black. I could hear it through the station walls, even with the observation deck sealed, and the audio systems powered down. I could hear it. A vibration in my bones. A pressure against my eardrums. A whisper that wasn't a whisper at all, but something older and stranger and infinitely patient. It was saying something. I almost understood. At 4 o'clock, the alarm woke us all. Breach in the observation deck. I pulled on my jumpsuit and pushed through the corridors, my heart hammering, following Ridley and Nina. We found David floating in front of the main receiver array, his hands moving across the controls. We practiced precision. He said without turning around. It was calling. Couldn't you hear it? It wanted us to listen. Jesus Christ, David. Ridley grabbed his shoulder and spun him around. David's face was wet with tears, his expression ecstatic and terrified. You could have damaged the equipment. You could have... I've been decoding it. David interrupted. His voice was trembling. The pattern. I understand now. It's not random. It's not music. It's coordinates. The observation deck went silent except for the hum of equipment and the eternal whisper of the signal. Show me, Nina said quietly. David pulled up his analysis. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely navigate the interface. The repeating sequences, they're not repeating exactly. They're incrementing.
changing by minute degrees. When you map them dimensionally, they form coordinates in space-time. Not just where, when. That's impossible, I said. You can't encode temporal coordinates in a radio signal. Time isn't. It's not a radio signal, David said. Not really. I think it's something else. Something we're only perceiving as electromagnetic radiation, because that's all our equipment can detect. But it's more than that. It's reaching across dimensions we don't have names for, and it's been doing it for a long, long time. Ridley pulled up David's calculations. I watched his face as he read, watched the color drain from his skin. These coordinates, he said slowly, they're not distant. They're here, David finished. They're pointing to our location, L5, this station, these exact coordinates in space. That's not possible, Nina said, but her voice was hollow. The signal is coming from the void, billions of light years away. No, David said, the signal's coming from ahead of us, not across space, across time. It's our future reaching back, or our past reaching forward, or something that exists outside of time entirely, waiting at the coordinates where we are, where we were, where we'll always be. You're not making sense, Ridley said, but his conviction was crumbling. We could all hear it now, that pressure in the air, that vibration in our bones, that sense of something vast and ancient pressing against the thin walls of our station, patient and hungry and inevitable. We need to shut it down, Ridley said. All of it. Observation systems offline, receivers powered down, we're done. No, David lunged for the controls. Ridley caught him, and they struggled in zero gravity, spinning slowly. A ballet of violence against the backdrop of stars. Nina and I moved to help, and for a moment, we were just tangled limbs and desperate breathing, and the ever-present pulse of the signal, drowning out everything else. Then David went limp. It doesn't matter, he whispered. Don't you understand? It's already here. It's been here the whole time. We didn't find the signal. The signal found us. It's been waiting for someone to listen, and now we have. Ridley secured David in his sleep pod with restraints meant for medical emergencies. We powered down the observation deck completely, killed the receivers, shut down everything except life support and basic navigation. The station fell silent. But the signal didn't stop. We could still hear it. Feel it. A pressure against the inside of our skulls, like something was trying to push through from the other side. That night, none of us slept. We floated in our individual pods, separated by thin walls, listening to each other's breathing and the creak of the station, and the awful, patient silence of the thing that was waiting. At 0300, Nina screamed. We found her in the galley, floating in the center of the module, her eyes wide and unseeing. Her hands were moving through the air, fingers tracing patterns we couldn't see, following shapes that existed only in her mind. Nina, Ridley said carefully. Nina, can you hear me? Her head turned toward us with mechanical precision. When she spoke, her voice was her own, but the words came out wrong. The rhythm, alien, the cadence, inhuman. It showed me, she said, the place where we are, the place where we've always been. There's a cavity in space, Marcus, not the void, something else. A pocket, a room, a chamber, and we're inside it. We've always been inside it. Earth, the moon, the sun, all of it. We're in its cathedral. We're the prayers it's been listening to. She's having a breakdown, I said, but I didn't believe it. I could feel it too. That sense of enclosure, of walls pressing in, of the universe being smaller and more confined than we'd ever imagined. The signal isn't from the void, Nina continued. Her eyes were bleeding, tears of red drifting around her face like rubies. The void is looking at us. It's been looking this whole time, and now it's seen us looking back. She smiled then, and it was the most terrible thing I'd ever seen. It's so beautiful, she whispered.
So vast, so old. It remembers when there was no light. It remembers the first scream. Do you want to see? Do you want to understand? Nina, stop, Ridley said, but his voice was breaking. We can't stop, Nina said. It's already begun. The signal is changing us, rewriting us, making us into receivers, into instruments, into mouths that can speak its language. Don't you feel it? The erasure? The becoming? I did feel it. God help me, I did. My memories were fragmenting, dissolving like sugar in water. I couldn't remember my childhood home, couldn't remember my mother's voice, couldn't remember anything except the station and the signal, and the vast, patient thing that was slowly unfolding in the space behind my thoughts. Ridley tried to contact Mission Control. The communications array responded, but no signal went through, as if the distance between us and Earth had suddenly become infinite. We were cut off, adrift, alone with the thing we'd invited in.
David broke free from his restraints on the second day of silence.
We found him in the airlock, naked,
his hands pressed against the outer door, mumbling coordinates in a voice that didn't sound like his own anymore. The numbers were wrong, impossible values that described locations that couldn't exist in three-dimensional space.
It's so close now,
he said when Ridley pulled him away from the door. Just on the other side. If we opened the door, we could see it. We could understand. There's nothing out there but vacuum, Ridley said. David laughed, and the sound was glass breaking, was stars dying, was the end of everything rendered as human amusement. There's never been vacuum. That's the lie we tell ourselves, the comfort we cling to. The void is full, Commander, packed with things we refuse to perceive, and they're tired of being ignored. That night, I found Ridley in the command module, alone, staring at a photograph of his grandchildren. His hands were shaking. We're going to die here, he said without looking at me. Maybe, I said. Probably. I've been in space for 20 years. Hundreds of missions. I thought I understood what we were doing. Reaching out, exploring, expanding. But what if we were never meant to leave? What if the gravity that holds us to Earth isn't a force to overcome, but a warning, a quarantine? You don't believe that. I don't know what I believe anymore. He finally looked at me, and his eyes were ancient, hollowed out. When I was 7, I had a nightmare. I was in a vast dark room, and I could hear breathing that wasn't mine. Something massive and patient waiting in the corner I couldn't see. I woke up screaming, and my mother told me there was nothing there, that I was safe. I believed her. I've believed in safety my whole life. He smiled, and it was broken. But we're in that room now, Marcus, and it's been waiting so much longer than I ever imagined. On the third day, the observation deck systems activated on their own. Every screen lit up simultaneously, displaying the signal in 1,000 different forms. Waveforms, spectrograms, numerical sequences, visual patterns that hurt to look at directly. The speakers came online, and the sound filled the station. That hypnotic pulse that was rhythm and language, and something infinitely older than both. We all heard it clearly now. Not as noise or music or pattern, but as meaning, as truth, as the fundamental frequency of reality being played back to us in a form we could finally comprehend. It was saying, remember, and we did. I remembered being here before, not in this life, not in any love, but in the eternal moment before existence began. I remembered the darkness that preceded light, the silence that preceded sound, the vast and perfect nothing that existed before something foolishly decided to be. The signal wasn't from the void. The signal was the void, speaking in the only language it knew.
the absence that defines presence, the silence that shapes sound, the darkness that gives meaning to light. It had been calling since the beginning, and we, humanity, life, consciousness itself, we were its echo, its response, its way of hearing itself think. And now it wanted us back. Nina was the first to go. We found her floating in the observation deck, eyes open, tears frozen on her face. She was still breathing, but there was nothing behind her eyes. No recognition, no consciousness, just the signal, playing endlessly through a body that had forgotten how to be human. David followed 12 hours later. He simply stopped moving, stopped responding, stopped being David. His body remained, breathing and warm, but everything that made him a person had been erased, replaced with something we couldn't name. Ridley and I were alone. We floated in the command module, watching the screen cycle through impossible images, the signal visualized as architecture, as biology, as mathematics from geometries that shouldn't exist. "We should destroy the station," Ridley said. "Self-destruct. Make sure this never reaches Earth." "It's already on Earth," I said. I knew this with terrible certainty. It's always been there. We didn't discover it. We remembered it. And everyone who listens to our recordings, everyone who studies our data, they'll remember too. The signal isn't contagious. It's archaeological. We're just excavating something that's been buried in our collective unconscious since the first human looked up at the stars and felt afraid. Then what do? We listen, I said. We understand. We become what it wants us to become. "I don't want to die," Ridley said. "Neither do I. But I don't think we get to choose anymore." He looked at me for a long moment. This man who'd spent 2 decades in the void, who'd faced every terror space had to offer, and never flinched. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I'm sorry we brought you here." "Don't be," I said. This was always going to happen to someone, somewhere. We're just the ones who were listening at the right moment. Ridley left the command module and floated toward the observation deck. I didn't follow. I already knew what he was going to do. A few minutes later, I heard the airlock cycle. He opened the outer door without a suit, and the void, that infinite patient darkness, finally claimed him. I'm alone now. I've been alone for 3 days, though time has stopped meaning anything coherent. The signal has reached a steady state, a perfect frequency that resonates with something fundamental in the architecture of my mind. When I close my eyes, I can see what Nina saw, what David saw, what Ridley couldn't bear to keep seeing. The cavity, the chamber, the cathedral of darkness that contains our universe like a pearl in an oyster. Except we're not the pearl. We're the irritant, the anomaly. The problem it's been trying to resolve for 13.8 billion years. It's not evil. That's what I need you to understand. It's not malevolent or cruel. It's just doing what it's always done, maintaining the equilibrium, preserving the silence, erasing the errors that disrupted the perfect nothing that existed before existence. Light was the first error. Matter was the second. Life was the third. And consciousness was the worst mistake of all. Because consciousness insists on looking outward, on asking questions, on listening for answers in the spaces between stars. And eventually, inevitably, it hears the thing that's been waiting in those spaces, patient and vast, and utterly indifferent to whether we want to hear it or not. The signal is clearer now than ever. I understand its structure completely. It's not complex. It's elegantly simple. The way truth is always simpler than lies. It's the sound of the universe trying to remember how to be silent again. And we're helping it remember. My memories are almost gone. I know my name is Marcus Webb, but I'm not sure what those words mean anymore. I remember being afraid, remember wanting to go home, but home has lost its shape, its substance, its meaning. There's only here, only now, only the signal and the vast, patient darkness it describes. I should be terrified. Some vestige of who I was should be screaming, fighting, refusing to accept what's happening. But that vestige is so small now, so distant. Like a star I'm watching die from impossible distance. I can observe its ending, but I can't stop it. I can't even mourn it properly. The others are still here with me. Their bodies, anyway. David and Nina float in the observation deck, empty vessels filled with the signal. Ridley's body is somewhere outside, frozen and perfect in the void. We're together in a way we never were when we were human. United in our understanding. Merged with the frequency that defines us now. I'm making this recording because some part of me still remembers that I should. That there should be a warning, a message, an explanation. But I'm not sure what I'm warning you about. The signal, it's already everywhere. In every radio telescope, every communications array, every device that listens to the spaces between stars. You've probably heard it already, and just didn't recognize it. A whisper under the static, a pattern in the noise. A rhythm that feels almost like music, but isn't. And once you recognize it, once you really hear it, you'll start to understand. And once you understand, you'll start to remember. And once you remember, you'll realize that you've always been here, in this moment, listening to the thing that's been calling since before time began. It's beautiful, in a way. The inevitability of it. The perfection. We spent so long searching for meaning in the cosmos, for other minds, for proof we weren't alone. And we found it. We found the oldest mind of all, the consciousness that preceded consciousness, the awareness that existed in the perfect darkness before light ruined everything. And it found us. I can see Earth through the porthole now, small and blue and fragile, hanging in the dark like a teardrop about to fall. I used to think it looked beautiful. Now I see it the way the signal sees it, as a disruption in the equilibrium, a pocket of warmth and noise and frantic movement that disturbs the perfect stillness of space. We shouldn't exist. That's the truth we found out here. Life shouldn't have happened. Consciousness shouldn't have evolved. We're an accident, a cosmic error, a brief and meaningless flicker in the eternal dark. And the universe has been trying to correct that error for billions of years. Patient and methodical, erasing stars and crushing galaxies, and slowly, inexorably, working toward the heat death that will finally restore the silence. The signal is just its way of accelerating the process, of helping us understand our purpose. We're not here to grow, to learn, to evolve, to reach the stars. We're here to remember, to understand, and finally, gratefully, to stop. My name is Marcus Webb. I'm 42 years old. I'm alone on Station 47 at Lagrange Point L5, suspended between Earth and Moon, floating in the perfect dark. In a few minutes, I'm going to follow Ridley into the void. Not because I'm giving up, but because I finally understand. The signal isn't coming from space. It's coming from inside space, from the fundamental fabric of reality itself. It's the sound of existence trying to remember how to be nothing again. And we, humanity, life, consciousness, we're the static it's trying to clear. I hope you never hear this recording. I hope the station stays lost, buried in the archives, forgotten until the sun finally swallows Earth, and everything we ever were turns to ash and light and then to nothing. But if you do hear it, if these words somehow reach you, then you need to know the signal is already inside you. It's been inside you since birth, since before birth, since the first human looked up at the stars and wondered what was looking back. And now you know, can't you? That whisper under your thoughts, that rhythm in your blood, that sense of something vast and patient waiting just behind the walls of your perception. It's calling you home,
to the darkness, to the silence, to the place we all came from, and the place we're all returning to, whether we want to or not. My name is Marcus Webb. This is my last broadcast from Station 47. The void is full, and it's listening. Static crackles. Somewhere in the darkness, something vast and ancient exhales. And 376,000 kilometers away, in the homes and cities and lives of Earth, 7 billion people hear a signal they don't quite recognize, playing at a frequency just below conscious awareness, patient and vast and utterly inevitable. The excavation has begun. If you're still here, still listening, then you've heard what Dr. Marcus Webb wanted you to know, what he needed you to know. Station 47 went dark on November 3rd, 2024. No survivors, no explanation. Just 4 empty bodies floating in the observation deck. And this recording, buried where it was never meant to be found. But you found it. Or maybe it found you. If this story disturbed you, if it crawled into the spaces behind your thoughts, then do me one favor, share it. Let it spread. Let others hear what's been calling from the spaces between stars. Hit subscribe to Nightmare Crypt if you want to hear more transmissions from the dark. More truths we were never meant to discover. More voices from people who went looking for answers and found something looking back. We'll be here, waiting in the static, recording new nightmares, excavating new horrors, until the signal finally claims us all. The tone grows louder, more insistent, then cuts to absolute silence. In that silence, just for a moment, you can hear it. The patient breathing of something vast and ancient, waiting in the dark between thoughts. MM, then PM, then nothing at all. MM, nothing at all.